Yeah, I have it, I'm sure I have it.
Hold on, can I call Billy?
Oh,
Yeah,
we can? We're going.
Really?
No, it's waiting to call Billy.
Well, Billy,
Yes.
isn't Billy on?
I don't know. He said he was having trouble.
Having trouble? Probably wasn't turned on yet, no, he turns on 10 minutes before.
Yeah, but this way we beat the crowds getting out.
That's what I said, true. You know how to work that phone?
I can't get out of it. There.
Oh boy, what are you trying to do?
Trying to call your brother to see if he's
Yeah.
on.
Questions? This may just be a clerical error, or maybe I made it with my own notes.
Did you get out?
Was she born in January?
June 29th.
June.
June
Thank you.
29th.
So you got the wrong birthday.
Hold on 1 second. Bart,
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the thing I noticed when I was looking through my notes is that
Talk to Bart.
Yeah,
her
Billy.
grandfather's funeral would have been on her birthday.
What's wrong?
June 29th in the year 2000. And I looked at it, and I said, where do I know that number from? And it was from earlier in my notes. And so when I just looked at the little message from Berkowitz, I just thought, oh, I don't want to say that if it's not, if I
What?
missed it.
You didn't get that information on our call yesterday, did you?
I got the birth date.
You got her birth date, I remember that, but I didn't know that it was the same, the date of death for my
The date of the funeral, I happened to, when we
Tom.
spoke, I hadn't gone to the office to gather the materials, because I had the blessing of having the notes of what you shared with the rabbi at that time, so.
Oh,
I heard you deliver the most beautiful, you did the service and the eulogy for Betty Weintraub.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been more touched by anything in my life.
was that Eddie's one?
Yes, and she was a dear, dear soul. I
Very
mean,
special person.
you captured everything,
You
and
know
you
what?
were a very good friend of hers.
And you know Eddie's brother-in-law passed his
Yeah.
life.
She had to have been 100 or give or take.
She was like 99 and 3/4.
Yeah, and a beautiful, we met them the first time, I didn't really, we both went to Washington University, and he was a year behind, yeah, I didn't really know him there.
With Clark Rose was his roommate, you know Clark?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. Did you
Salt
ever
of
see
the
him
earth.
without a smile on his face? Ever. But anyway, they lived on Kerrsdale at the time and had a tennis court and were just so welcoming and she actually looked the same at 99
She
as
did.
she did when I met
She
her.
was a stunning presence, no doubt, and just an awesome lady.
Modest, I mean, they had a very successful, I think, well, they still do, successful business.
Mhm.
And she dressed beautifully, everything was perfect, her hair was perfect, I mean, and Eddie's about as nice a guy as you'll find.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very close with Eddie and Gail.
Yeah. So,
Betty was one of the first people I met when I moved to Cleveland because I did a wedding in that family, Eddie's nephew Steve's wedding. About 6 weeks after I moved here, I did that wedding, and so I met Betty there, and we just had a fabulous
yeah,
friendship.
exactly, that was, yeah, from the get-go.
I just want to make
What
sure.
are they doing? Oh, they're trying to hook Billy up?
Billy got it.
Yep.
Tom sent out a Zoom address to everyone, not the live stream address.
We've already said it many times.
Billy went just now to the right address and he's on.
Okay,
Okay, good.
thank you. Okay, bye.
He's on?
I'm glad we got it squared away.
Okay. Then we're
Sorry.
good.
Yeah.
It's no problem.
Bill,
You want to do Korea first?
Yeah.
you right?
I'll shut the store and you're on.
Yeah. So, when we spoke on Zoom, we talked about the Kriya ribbon that you're wearing now. Kriya means breaking or rending. It harkens back to the time of the Bible when you'd learn of the death of a loved one, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, heaven forbid a child. You would tear your clothing as a sign of the emotion of the moment. And also to remind yourself that something very precious had been torn from the fabric of your life. Now, we don't go to quite such lengths today, but we do so with this ribbon. And we signify that sense of pain and loss that comes. But we also, at the very same time, we say words of blessing and affirmation. thanking God for such a good and righteous life. And so I ask you, if you wish, to repeat after me these words of blessing. Here they are. You ready? Baruch atah Adonai Dayan ha'emet. And these words simply mean, we praise you, God, for you judge our lives, the emet, in truth. Amen. If you grab the bottom of that, I'm going to have you do it yourself. It's right from no. Right here at the bottom. You're going to grab the bottom and you just tear it. You'll see it. Yep. Those are pretty easy to tear. Awesome. And you just
Pull it off?
No.
That's
Leave
it?
it just like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I don't know if I passed that test.
יהיו לרצון אמרי פי והגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי וגואלי לפניך. Adonai mi yagur bohalecha, mishkan bahar kodshecha, God, who abides in your house, who dwells in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth in their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless and honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others, who would never take bribes, those who live in this way, the way in which our dear one lived. May they forever, ever be a blessing. Amen. El Harachamano, sweet God, you have taken a blessed friend. We remember Maxine with the gift of her presence, her heart, her mind, her generosity of spirit, of energy, of substance, her kindness. We still feel it. She is missed already. In this moment of sorrow, we thank God forever that we have had her so long into our lives, and that throughout all the valleys and shadows that we have passed, her presence has stood by us, generation after generation. A woman of valor, a matriarch. There is a teaching in the Jewish tradition that the day of one's death is, in a way, more favored than the day of birth. The rabbis explain this strange assertion by means of a parable. They tell of two ships passing one another in the harbor, one ship coming in and the other one just going out. But the people at the dockside, they spoke with praise only of the ship coming in. Why? Because they knew that she had gone out in peace and returned home in peace. As to the ship just setting sail, no one knew exactly where she would travel, whose lives would be touched by her journey. I share this story as a means of reminding us of our purpose at this memorial service here today. We are surely here to say farewell to Maxine, but we are also here at Dockside to welcome her home. We can seek consolation in the idea that her spirit, her dearest values, her teachings are remembered and carried on in our homes. None of them are buried with her today. She can still be very present to us and alive through us. Now, I didn't have the blessing to get to know her well during her lifetime. But in the days that I've spent with those of you here assembled and others gathered virtually right now via the miracle of live stream technology, I hope that I've absorbed in some way a bit of her essence, what she stood for so long. With 102 birthdays in her rearview mirror, she surely had much to be proud of in her life's journey. I hope that the remembrances I share on her family's behalf might allow us to use this period of mourning to guide us back to a celebration that she was born and that she lived among us. Today we mourn with her sons, Dan and his Nancy, Dr. Tom and his Gail. Our hearts ache with yours. The two of you with your families mourn the matriarch to your children, grandchildren, and extended family. We pledge to be with you today and continually, in friendship, good care, and consolation. Indeed, Maxine's name will be remembered aloud at all of our memorial prayers over this coming month at Anshe Chesed, Fairmount Temple. She'll be remembered as a blessing. Looking back to when he was a kid, Tom remembers a mom who found herself very often the referee in a house filled with dominant male energy, including two boisterous and active sons, their dad, and two male dogs to boot. Maxine did not shrink from this role. She developed a determination from her earliest days of having both kids that she wouldn't be the kind of referee that only focused on following and enforcing rules, but also understanding the nature of the game being played. A woman who, to borrow Tom's term, was a champion for others on the field of play, to succeed in each of their endeavors. He'll carry forward her values of kindness, honesty, sincerity, and loyalty, and Dan adds that he can look back on his life and realize just how lucky he was, how lucky he is to have grown up deep into his life, having parents so loving and welcoming and affirming and thoughtful, caring to their spouses, Nancy and Gail. In truth, Dan says that his mom would accept any person or activity her sons brought to their mom's attention. These behaviors were how she expressed her strongest Jewish values concerning the primacy of mishpacha, of family, and shalom bayit, peace in one's home. In what Tom and Dan describe as Maxine's beautiful and determined life, she stayed current with the news, including a fierce liberalism in politics and a decades-long passion for basketball or football, cheering for the Cavs and the Browns, to be sure. Dan says his mom remarked that she knew so much about football because she had two sports-oriented boys to raise, and she had either to be with them or be out of it, and there was no chance she was going to be out of it. Gail added that part of what she gained in joining Tom's family was a sense of being part of a close-knit and attentive web of relationships led by Maxine's love as a guiding influence. She remembers being able to come to Maxine and Lester's Mansfield home even when she was pregnant and know that she'd be nurtured and taken care of, and that the same was true for her kids. Their grandparents' home was a place to get nothing but a wider scope of rule enforcement from folks who had tired of being referees and enjoyed instead spoiling their grandchildren with plenty of loving attention. This was a constant. Even up until a few weeks ago, the matriarch of the Zavelson family was living independently, staying attentive to sending birthday cards, get well cards. I personally remember having received a note of encouragement when I announced to our congregation a year and a half ago that I was entering serious medical treatment. Thank goodness, when I was in grade school, they were still teaching cursive, as I know my kids would have trouble deciphering her beautiful but cursive handwriting. Maxine's great-granddaughter, Caitlin, wrote to me this morning that the same was true for her in each and every birthday card she received growing up, that Nanny Maxine never forgot to send one. Caitlin remembers eagerly anticipating pickups at the airport in North Carolina and telling Maxine stories then, and even recently about her life, hearing her grandma, her great-grandma, say, "Oh, I see," with an elongated sound to the I and the E and C, almost using each syllable to savor the connection of getting the chance to know her great-granddaughter. Maxine's grandson Andy told me on Zoom yesterday about the Medina drop-off point for his grandparents to come get him and siblings, and that there was absolutely nothing off limits at their house. They'd stock extra balls and games and make excellent summer memories under their grandparents' looser set of rules and restrictions. Granddaughter Laura remembers those trips to Mansfield as well. The willingness to purchase Cookie Crisp cereal for her, playing games of Crazy Eights all day and all night, making chocolate soda drinks with Maxine. She remembers how the house would shake when you run through it, which, I might add, you would only remember if your grandparents let you run through it. There's going to continue to be a running theme here as I share during the course of this service and in the live stream how David remembers his grandmother always choosing her own food very carefully with nourishment in mind, even as she'd let her grandson enjoy donuts and shakes and ice cream on extra trips to Friendly's, his for the asking. David recalls long walks with his grandma, even once walking 4 or 5 miles with her to reach a donut shop that it would have taken maybe 10 minutes to get by a car. But hey, why would you do that when the walk would be so much more memorable and you'd get so much more time with your grandson? Billy wrote to me yesterday by email about how gratifying it was to him when he came out to his grandmother, that she was so loving and supportive and openness and caring to his being gay that might not have been the approach of everyone else's grandparent, let alone one that had been born in an entirely different era. He also shared how glad he is that over the past few years he had recorded his grandmother telling wonderful life stories in her inimitable fashion. Upon learning of her death, he just recently took a long bike ride while listening to her in full vigor pre-pandemic, when she lived independently with clarity of mind and poise that these recent months have brought undue pressure on. Cooped up, she focused intently on what some of her friends had to say about what was happening in this world. Truth be told, Maxine outlived almost everyone that she grew up with and called a friend, going back to her early years in Glenville. No, I'm speaking about her friends Andrea, Ari, Rachel, and Lawrence, the main TV personalities on MSNBC. To tell you the truth, Billy isn't as much of a fan of that network as is his grandma, and he would want that registered today. But he admired her fierce political loyalties and the shared position on numerous issues. They both believed passionately in equal rights, and he is amazed that she endured the last 4 years, long enough to stick around to be out of, well, to force out the current resident of the White House, whose name Maxine would not want to grace this service. But as much as she loathed the current president, all her grandparents speak of her as synonymous with the kinds of values by which we would all want to be remembered. Selflessness, generosity, sweetness, unconditional love for children Tom and his Gail, Dan and his Nancy, grandchildren Laura and her William, David and his Tracy, Andrew and Billy, great-grandchildren Caitlin, Brandon, Anna, and Chase. The values that she leaves to these many descendants are ones they intend to carry on her behalf. Her life's distance traveled from June of 1918 up until just a few days ago, and they will hold her close as they move forward in life. You know, it's remarkable to me to learn that Maxine was the only child in the household of Joseph and Florence Abrams growing up here in Cleveland. She made friends from that time, extending her family in a way in Glenville, lifelong friends. But it seems that when she wasn't even yet 16, something else very special and critical happened in her life. She met a handsome and striking redhead with a good heart who became more than just a friend to her, an Ohio State undergrad by the name of Lester. She was at a dance with him, and she must have made a strong impression on him because he was so drawn to her that that very night he called his own shot and declared he was going to marry her. For the next 65 years, including more than 61 of them married, she made such a beautiful life with Lester. At the time of his death and his funeral, held on her birthday, 20 years ago. Who would have thought she had 20 more circles around the sun to make? I have the benefit of having at her temple the notes from her conversation with the rabbi conducting Lester's funeral. She told him that she was attracted to Lester because of his smile, his kindness, and his generosity. They were just so right for one another, she told the rabbi. She had excellent vision, and Lester was colorblind. So she was the one who sorted her husband's socks ever so carefully that he wouldn't have to wear one blue sock and one brown sock to work. The two of them shared a devotion to Judaism, his roots beginning at my temple, Anshe Chesed, and hers growing up at Silver's temple. An interfaith marriage, if you will. But together they worked on behalf of the Jewish community here and in Mansfield. He became president of that synagogue, and she was a president of their sisterhood. They loved attending the religious experience of Ohio State football games in Columbus, where they have season's tickets that I understand are still very much in active use. She exclaimed to the rabbi at the time of Lester's funeral that her marriage was so good for her and for Lester because they simply loved doing things together. They reconnected with Jewish life again in their membership at Anshe Chesed, although she had grown up at Silver's. She was proud to carry on her final time on earth with the connection to a place where Les had been confirmed, it seems to me, just about 90 years ago. He went by many names, but she often called him Leb, his Yiddish name, meaning heart. It is comforting to imagine her, if there is a reunion of souls after this life, reunited with her Leb, with her heart, her man, the one she adored, and the one she missed over these last couple of decades, something fierce. Our Jewish tradition teaches that there is a name by which we are called in this life, but it only reflects one dimension of our being. There is also a name attached to every type of experience by which we live, whether a short life or a very long one, such as Maxine's. When I spoke with you all in her family yesterday, I hadn't had a chance to go get our member file for Maxine, so I didn't know, and you all didn't remember at the time, that her Hebrew name, as she reported it to us, was Zelda. There is a modern Hebrew Israeli poet who also goes by the name of Zelda, whose words I'd like to conclude with today. She wrote, L'chol ish yesh shem, which means each of us has a name. And she continues, L'chol ish yesh shem, each of us has a name given by God and given by our parents, each of us a name given by our stature and our smile, and given by what we wear. L'chol ish yesh shem, each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls, each of us a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors, each of us a name given by our sins and given by our longing. L'chol ish yesh shem, each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love, each of us a name given by our celebrations and given by our work. L'chol ish yesh shem, each of us has a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. L'chol ish yesh shem, each of us has a name given by the sea and given by our death. L'chol ish yesh shem, each of us has a name. And the name Maxine Lois Abrams Zavelson, hers, was an honored name among us. She made a good name, one that represents permanently generosity, goodness, and family. Let's plan now to live up to her good name in our longing, in our journeys, and in the way that one day, after a long life's journey, like her, we might come home. Amen. I invite you to please rise. אל מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים. חמצי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזכירים. את נשמת זלדה בת יוסף שלחה לעולמה. בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר, Amen. God, full of compassion, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest now in your sheltering presence to our beloved Maxine, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let her find refuge now forever in the shadow of your wings. Let her soul be bound up in the bonds of everlasting life. God, she is your inheritance, and you are hers. She's a good inheritance. May she rest in peace always. As together we say, Amen.